Number 4. I still get chills telling this, but when I was around 9 or 10, I would stay at my grandma's house almost every day while my mom worked. Her house was surrounded by woods that led to a nearby neighborhood. I would usually play in there with my older cousin, and nothing dangerous ever happened. However, one day, in the middle of the summer, our neighbors came to our door with bad news. They told us that there was a man walking behind the house, carrying a knife in his back pocket. They said he was a skinny white guy with no hair that looked to be in his mid-40s or 50s. We were all shocked and scared, since nothing like this ever happened before. We assumed that it was just for protection from wild animals or something like that, since he was walking around in the woods. Nothing else happened until about 3 weeks later. My aunt was sitting at the kitchen table one night when she heard heavy breathing coming from outside. She even thought that whoever it was had whispered her name. She freaked out and called the cops. They came right away, but couldn't find anything. A couple of days go by, and nothing happens, until me and my older cousin hear a gunshot off in the distance. Me and her just shrug it off, thinking that it's probably someone hunting or something. Then we hear 2 more gunshots. This time they were louder and closer. We ran into the house, screaming and crying that someone has a gun, and they're shooting close to the house. My grandmother calls the police again, and they go searching, but they never found who it was. Then the phone call started. My grandma would get these disturbing phone calls of a man describing what she was wearing and where she was in the house. He would also tell her about how he wanted to rape and kill her. Eventually, it all stopped. The phone calls, the strange man walking behind our house, all of it. So creepy man who was stalking my grandma. If you ever see this, just know that if you ever come near me or my family again, I have since learned how to use a gun, and I won't hesitate to shoot you.
Number 3.
I had something really scary happen to me when I was around 18 years old in the early 1990s. I was really into cars back then, and I liked working on my own cars even though I'm a girl. I had a 1979 Z28 Camaro with T-tops, and in the summer I would go cruising around with my friends looking for something to do. One evening while driving up and down the main street in a neighboring city, I noticed a small red truck following us at a distance. I was with my friend Jenny, and I mentioned to her that I thought this truck could be following us. I pulled into the driveway of a fast food restaurant, and I noticed that the truck pulled into the restaurant 3 driveways back. I drove out into the other direction, and he did the same. Again, I pulled into another driveway, and the truck pulled in 3 driveways behind. I did this several times, and the truck kept on following, always staying about 3 driveways back. Jenny and I decided that we should just head towards home, which was about 30 minutes away. We thought that the driver of the truck would just give up and let us go, but he did not. He just kept following. It was now getting very late, and we were beginning to worry as the truck had now been following us for about an hour. We did not want to go home and have him follow us there. I decided that the best thing to do would be to drive to the nearest police station. I told Jenny what I planned on doing, and to my horror, she grabbed the steering wheel and pulled it, causing the car to veer sharply right. "What the hell are you doing?" I screamed at her. "You're gonna make us crash." It was bad enough that I had to worry about the truck following us, but I now had to worry about my passenger freaking out and causing us to have an accident. "No, we can't go to the police," she insisted. It occurred to me right then and there that somehow she thought this was all our fault. That somehow just by cruising around, she thought that we had done something to provoke this. I reluctantly drove away from the police station. We approached the bridge and we were stopped by the red light. on a one-way street. The truck was directly behind a car that was next to us. The car turned right, allowing the truck to pull forward. I looked over, and to my horror, this guy had stepped out of the truck and was standing next to the passenger side of my car with no pants on, and he was masturbating. This guy didn't have his pants down around his ankles. As a matter of fact, he had none on at all. I had the disturbing feeling that he probably didn't even have any with him this whole time that he had been following us. I hit the gas pedal and ran the red light going over the bridge. Somehow my friend didn't see what the guy had been doing just outside of her window. When I told her, she just kept saying, "No way. How the hell did you not see that?" I asked her in disbelief. It occurred to us that this guy would likely rape us if he had the chance. I drove up and down a few one-way streets and back over the bridge and into the country. He followed us for what seemed like forever until we were able to lose him by going really fast out in the middle of nowhere. We went home and tried to forget about it. For some reason I never told my parents, and I'm not sure why. A few weeks later I saw on the news that the police were looking for a guy in a small red truck. He was wanted for a rape. They showed his picture and it resembled the guy that had been following us. I thought that their description of the truck was a little different than the one we had seen, but maybe not. I always wondered if it was him. I'm just glad that we had to never find out.
Number 2. I used to live near the woods about 3 years ago. And one day, me and my friends were all chilling and hanging out on my porch. We were all bored, so we decided to go out and play tag in the woods. First off, let me tell you the names of my friends. It was me, Brandon, Trent, and Abby. It was in the middle of the day, so we really didn't think anything dangerous could happen. We all headed towards the woods, and when we got there, we all decided who was going to be it. Trent was selected and began counting, while the rest of us went into hiding. We all decided to climb up this huge dirt hill, so when Trent would come looking for us, he would have to climb up there, and we would have the advantage of escaping through the other side. But as soon as Trent found us, he climbed up really quick and managed to tag one of us, which was Abby. We all made our way back down the hill, and we noticed something off in the distance, about 30 yards away from us. There was 4 large men, all looking like they were in their mid-20s to early 30s. One of them said,
"Hey kids, you want to come over here? We got some candy."
in a really creepy, menacing voice with a slight grin on his face. He had one of his hands behind his back. Me being a kid that was always taught not to talk to strangers, I slid down the huge dirt hill, not caring about anything but getting away from there. My friends did the same thing, and as soon as the guys realized that we were running away, they all started sprinting towards us. The guy that had his hand behind his back was now holding a huge kitchen knife. He was getting closer and closer to me and my friends. Brandon, being the biggest one in the group, was obviously the slowest, but thankfully my house was very close to these woods, so it only took us a couple of minutes to get back. Thankfully all these men were pretty big, so they weren't very fast. We lost them with all the cuts we took through the trails, and since we were 30 yards away from them and were young kids, we were able to outrun them. When we got back to my house, I told my mom the whole story, and she freaked out and gave me a big hug. I don't know what they would have done to me or any of my friends if they had gotten a hold of one of us, but I'm guessing that they didn't have good intentions. Considering that one of them had a huge kitchen knife hidden behind his back. The next day, me and my friends were all hanging out on the porch again. Trent said that while he was counting, he saw these 4 men walking down one of the trails, and that's what made him decide to look for us without finishing his counting. He didn't think much of it and didn't tell us. I'm 99% sure that if he would have told us earlier, we would have left before the men could even spot us, which would have prevented this whole thing from happening. But I really can't blame him since we were all young kids. I'm just glad that we all made it out of that, alive.
Number 1.
I live in a small college town just 20 minutes from my hometown. Most of my friends live in my hometown, so I go out there pretty frequently. Yesterday, I had plans with 2 people out in my hometown. We can call it Town A. It's big enough to have one Walmart, a large mall, and a large hospital. It also has one university and one community college. Even though it's pretty big by my standards, there's only a few bad areas. As long as these streets are avoided, you're pretty safe. One friend had to be picked up from 40 minutes away from Town A. We finished up early and I dropped him off to work. When I got back into Town A, I had another hour to kill. I decided to go to the park and take a walk into the woods by the zoo. Driving there and back to my dorm would take about 40 minutes and my friend would be ready in an hour. The woods are split by a river. One side of the river is pretty crowded. It has a dog park, a lot of houses, and it's parallel to a busy street. I parked on a side that was the opposite of this side so I could smoke a bowl without having to worry of being bothered. When I got to the park, I noticed there was only one other car in the gravel lot. It didn't look like anyone was in it. I sat in my car for about 10 minutes to listen to that one really long Avenged Sevenfold song. I got out of the car and started walking towards the woods with a cigarette in hand. I heard the other car door open to reveal a 40-year-old black man who looked homeless. His car was pretty messy, but I didn't think much of it. He asked me for a lighter. He had seen me with my cigarette, so he knew I had one. I walked over to the car and handed him my lighter. As I got closer to him, I saw that something wasn't right. He had a look of desperation in his eyes, and he watched me like I was some kind of prey. He thanked me, and I started to walk away, but he called me back. He asked where I was going. I lied and said I was going to the dog park, which looked pretty crowded. I lied and said that my dad was there with our pit bull. He could tell that I was lying. He asked why I had parked up the opposite side of the stream. I lied again and said that I was concerned about parking on the other side and started to walk off again. He tried to get my attention again to say something else, but I walked off saying my dad would be really annoyed if I was late. By the time I was out of sight, I sprinted into the zoo, which was near the dog park but much more crowded. It was about 3 at the time, and the zoo closed at 4. After spending an hour in the zoo, I figured he had left. I came back to the parking lot and still saw his car without him in it. I sped walked to my car and got in. As I drove to the entrance, I saw 2 heads barely peering over the dashboard. There was another adult man sitting in the back seat. That's when it hit me. It wasn't that his car was messy. There had been another human in the back seat flattened out underneath of a sheet and some trash. I sped off and drove to my friend's house, who was expecting me soon anyway. As I was driving away, I realized what was going on. The 2 men were waiting in their car for someone to go to the trail, or for someone to get close enough to the car to snatch into the back seat. I'm not sure what would have happened to me if I had gone into the woods or stayed to talk. I'm sure the only reason that I got away is because I said someone was waiting for me.
Hey guys, Unit 522 here, and I want to thank you very much for watching my video. I would appreciate it very much if you would share, like, and comment. And if you're new to this channel, become one with the Unity by hitting the subscribe button. If you have a scary story or experience that you want featured on this channel, you can always send it to my email or post it on the Free Horror Stories subreddit. The links for those can be found in the description below. If you would like to help out this channel even more, consider a PayPal donation. And for more updates, be sure to follow me on Twitter. There's nothing wrong with a little darkness in your life, as long as you never forget, there's always a reason to be afraid.